Dollar Archangel.
No, I mean, thank you for including me in the group. It was very nice to be asked, and I'm happy to do it. So
No, my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out just to get involved with yet another one of my silly little projects.
no, not at all. I'm happy to be doing stuff. I really am. I really am happy to be doing something.
Yeah. Oh, good. Well, yeah, my pleasure having you on board. Hashtag Performing Arts with John Ellis Benton. And in this week's episode,
Elliott Wallis.
so let's talk about Elliott Wallis.
Yeah.
Start of life. Where do you hail from?
So I'm from a small village in Northumberland, about an hour from the border of Scotland. So almost as far as you can go before you hit Scotland. From all the way up there, and always been in theatre. Like always, it's what I wanted to do from the off. It's all I ever thought about. I mean, my parents built me a mini theatre in our cellar.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, we live in an old coaching inn, so it's got we have a cellar where they used to store all the barrels and stuff. So they converted that into a small theatre, private little theatre for me.
What did you sort of put on there? Did you put on little shows?
I can't. I just made stuff up. I just made stuff up. I would spend like all day down there, coming up with stuff, and then like at the end of the day, they put little spotlights in and red curtains and everything. Yeah,
that sounds wicked.
Crazy. It was crazy.
I want your childhood.
Absolutely, but yeah, I was always involved. I was obviously in theatre at school, and I was part of children's theatre groups and amateur theatre groups, and I don't think there was ever a moment where I wasn't doing something as a kid. I think there was one point where I had 3 shows going on, like one in high school, and then there was one somewhere else, and yeah, it was all a little bit crazy actually, and actually that was really nice because that was our social life as well. Because my mum works for a theatre, and the whole family loves anything theatre, and we would go and see anything. So
it wasn't something you found; it was sort of ingrained in you, like you were raised with a love of theatre.
Yes, although until I came along, my parents weren't really very theatre-y. No one really knows where my love of theatre came from. It just sort of was there, but then it became what our family did, which was really, really nice. And I used to do a summer school in Sunderland every year for 2 weeks, where 150 of us would learn a whole musical in 10 days and then perform it at the Sunderland Empire. My parents were chaperones for it. So we spent like 2 weeks in a theatre together with 150 kids, like doing the show, and then they got paid in free tickets, like for the rest of the year. So that was like our theatre paid for the year. So
that's fantastic. I don't know if it's maybe when I was growing up, my family weren't theatre centric at all. There was no sort of arts in the family, so I never ever heard of a project like that in sort of like the Midlands area. Never heard of anything like it. But that's amazing. You had that.
Yeah, I think some of the Birmingham theatre, I think maybe one of the new Alex, I think maybe does it now, but yeah, I mean, I think they did them in London, but to find one up north was quite rare, I think. So I was quite lucky, but I did it for 8 years. And it was great fun.
What sort of shows could you tick off your list there?
We did the first year was Thoroughly Modern Millie, so very traditional, and then the following year was like We Will Rock You.
Yeah, that's quite a contrast.
Absolutely, and then we did Bugsy, and we did West Side Story, and We did Oliver one year and Footloose,
Awesome.
Fame, all those kind of shows. Yeah, with 150 of us,
Bugsy Malone is
age
definitely
9 to
sort of-
25. So it was crazy.
Oh, that's quite an age range as well. So it's
Yeah,
Really varied.
absolutely. Yeah, and it was quite nice because I was like, I think I was about 11 when I started, so I was in like the mass ensemble when I started, and then I sort of gradually started to get more principal roles, and by the time I left, which was really nice.
yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Bugsy Malone. I don't think there's a person I've spoke to in theatre who's never done it. Apart from me, I think I'm the only one. I think it's a rite of
Kind
passage.
of like a childhood staple, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've done it twice.
Oh, yeah.
I did it there, and I did it at school as well, and I hate it. I hate it now.
Fair play. I get the same sort of feeling with Hairspray. I was in a performance of that. I played Edna, as I'm sure you could probably guess.
Perfect casting.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I like it when people associate me with John Travolta, but that's the only time they do. Yeah, I get the same thing. Like you know the songs back to back. You hear it all the time. Everyone always talks about it. You're just like, shut up.
Shut up. No, not that show again.
Yeah.
And it was weird because I'd done it that in the summer in Sunderland, and then I went back to school in the September, and our drama teacher was like, so our Christmas show is Bugsy Malone, and I was like, I've just done it. I've just done it. Yeah.
Oh, you poor old fruit. But still, it's all excellent experience. So was it a big thing in school?
It was a big thing for me in school. It wasn't a big thing for the rest of the school. There was like me, and then there were a few of us who did drama. I think one other person is still doing is an actress. Nobody else went into it. Certainly from my year, there were a couple a bit younger than me, but we had an incredible. Well, the school I was at had this incredible drama teacher called Mike Fry, who was always aware of the kids in the area that were about to come up to high school, who were involved in drama, and he was really supportive of me while I was growing up, and came to see me in lots of other things, and unfortunately he died about a year before I got up to the high school.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He had cancer, and he was the most incredible, inspirational, wonderful person. And this tiny village in Northumberland and their high school, he did like Les Mis and
Wow.
the RSC's Nicholas Nickleby, the whole two parts of it. That's the kind of stuff he did. He really was really ambitious, and so unfortunately I never got to be taught by him. But then we had this other amazing drama teacher who took over from him, Jane Hamilton, and she was incredible, and she was an actress herself, and then came to teach, and so it kind of was a big thing before I was there, but unfortunately I think after Mike died, it just wasn't quite so much of an importance to the high school, which was a bit of a shame. Now it's apparently they've been doing a lot more, and they've been doing sort of like We Will Rock You and stuff, and there's a bit more of a drive for drama, but it just kind of it wasn't there while I was there, unfortunately.
Oh, that's gutting. So, but was it always the path you were going to go down? Was theatre always the way? There was never any variation?
I think there was one point where I thought, oh, maybe I could be an architect. But that was about it.
That's a hell of a contrast.
Yeah, and I'm terrible at drawing as well, so I don't know why anyone thought that was a good idea. I never did anything about it. It was always it was theatre, and I was going to be an actor, and that's always what I was going to do. It was never going to be anything else. And like right from a young age, and everyone was like, yeah, he'll go into theatre. It's inevitable.
Yeah, and quite right too. Why not? Very honourable profession. What were your planned steps? Because it's obviously a really hard thing to get into it professionally. So what, in your head, when you were sort of planning your future, what were the steps you were going to take?
I was going to go to London and go to drama school and be an actor. That was it. Done. And it was going to happen in like a few years, And it is funny because obviously I'm not an actor now, but it's I never really properly considered the other jobs in theatre. It was always, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. When you're young and you watch the theatre, you see the people on stage and you go, "Oh, I want to do that."
Yeah, you think that's it. That's the start and end of it.
Yeah. And and I loved creating theatre. I really loved creating theatre, but I was a performer. That's what I did. And so I was going to finish A levels, and then I was going to go to drama school in London, and yeah, that was going to be it. I mean, that didn't happen. Quite,
Well, there's still time.
I was a very, very young 18-year-old, and I went to London to audition, and I auditioned for sort of a few drama schools. And I think like I kind of knew I wasn't going to get in. I knew I was too young. I knew I wasn't ready for it, but I didn't have a plan B.
That there's still nothing wrong with the way you went about it. I mean, you try.
I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, that's always been sort of, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. Like, you don't wait for people to sort of offer you stuff. You don't wait for things to happen. You just go and do them. And so I did the auditions and I didn't get in, and which was kind of expected, but it was also kind of like, oh, what do I do now? Because my school had been like, you're going to go to university. And I was like, I don't want to go to university. It's not what I want to do. It was like, but everyone's applying for university. I don't want to go to university. And I think I got around it because one of the drama schools, you had to like apply through UCAS. So I was like, I'm applying for university. So then I didn't have uni and I didn't have drama school. And then I found out about this course in Stratford on Avon called Year Out Drama. And it was funny. It was like somebody at my school, her brother was in a theatre company that was run by somebody who'd done this course. So it was, that kind of second, third hand kind of knowledge. And I went on the website and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this looks interesting. Okay, I'll apply. And I got an audition. The audition was like 4 weeks before the course was due to start. And it was in Stratford on Avon. And bear in mind, I'm in Northumberland. It's like 250 miles away. So
yeah,
we drove down.
Some way to travel.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd been to Stratford before, like because of my love of Shakespeare and whatever. So we knew the area. So I went down and did the audition, and I thought I'd blown the audition because I buggered up my speech.
What was your speech?
I think it was Edgar from King Lear. And we also had to do the Romeo and Juliet prologue. And I remember, I do remember that because the course leader, the wonderful Deborah Moody, I love her to bits. She was like, okay, do the Romeo and Juliet speech, but imagine you're on the stage at the Globe in 1595 and all the groundlings are going to heckle you. I was like, okay. So I started this speech and then she would like start shouting stuff and like fake throwing stuff at me. And I was like, I've forgotten the speech. I don't know the speech. So I thought I'd blown the audition. And then I started talking about musical theatre because that's what I'd grown up on. And it was certainly at the time when I was that like at 18 and I had just arrived at the audition, I kind of was like, oh, this is like a really serious like Shakespeare course. And then for some reason I ended up talking about musical theatre. And then I walked out of the audition and I was like, no, blown it. I've blown my life. It's gonna. And then we got home to Northumberland. And then a couple of days later, we got this letter that was covered in like stars and things, just had hooray written across it. I just opened it and I got in and I was like, what have I let myself in for? What am I doing? It's crazy.
So there was definitely a touch of melodrama about I failed this, I'm not going to get in. Then suddenly this big sparkly Hogwarts letter arrives and everything's wonderful.
Yeah. But like I said, I was a really, really shy 18-year-old and leaving home was a huge, huge thing for me. And it was because I didn't really socialize very much with people in my village. I didn't really sort of have a lot of friends in the village. I was very comfortable in my house with my family. And so yeah, leaving home was terrifying. And because I only had like 4 weeks to kind of pack and go, I think that was probably the best for me, because I think if I'd got into a course or something back in March, I would have talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
And what I needed was just somebody to go, there you go, off you go, done. And that's essentially what happened. And
very quick turnaround.
Yeah. And so it was just a case of, okay, I'm just going to do it. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm just going to go. And I remember that the very first day of the course, we started at 9:00 in the morning and we finished at 9:00 at night. And we got to like
of fire.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we got to like 5 o'clock. I was like, okay, we're gonna start finishing now. And then they sent us off to do something else. And then that finished at 7. And then they like sent us off to do something else. And there was 27 of us, and a lot of us were living together. And we just kind of finished the day and was like, what is this? What is this? And it ended.
So where did you live, if you don't mind me asking? When I first, obviously our paths first crossed at Stratford. You know, up until we started preparing for this, I didn't know that you actually came from up north. I thought because you were very confident and comfortable, and you know, you just seemed like exactly who I would expect to see around Stratford-upon-Avon, to be completely honest.
Yeah. I kind of after a few years, I kind of slowly started morphing into the Stratford kind of way of life. I mean, I only left at the beginning of this year. So I was there for 6.5 years in the end. So the course was at Stratford College. It wasn't a college run course because it was a post-18 course. And it wasn't the thing about year out drama is there's no like qualification at the end of it. There's no it's not a foundation course or anything like that. It is purely a year of incredible experience and knowledge and working with all these amazing people who work in the industry. You know, music directors, composers, and movement directors, and voice people, and you know, directors, and all these people that all work professionally in the industry. And so it was an amazing course. But I lived, in answer to the question, I actually lived in student halls on Stratford College.
Oh right, the flats next to the college. Oh right, nice.
Yeah. So some of us lived in there, and then there were 3 other houses out in town.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah. So going from like as you say, when you're a kid, you first see these performances, and you know, you see the stars of the show, you think that's it. So obviously through your experience and through this course and whatnot, you've discovered there's actually layer upon layer upon layer of people who have to be there to make a performance go. Whereabouts was this point that music became your thing?
Well, I mean, I've always played piano. I've played piano since I was about 7. And I played guitar before that, and I still play a little bit, not very well. And I played violin when I was 3 for a few weeks. I didn't have the discipline at 3. I wish I'd hung on to it actually, because I would love to be able to play the violin.
I mean, that's an amazing claim anyway. I mean, most of us are still shitting ourselves in our beds during our sleep when we're 3 years old, and you're there with a violin. That's fantastic.
Yeah, when I was at Year Out Drama, we had 2 incredible music directors, Joe Atkins and Tim Gilvin. And Joe was sort of our primary music director, and he got me to do some assisting of him. And so, you know, because he would come up from London to do these sessions, and if he was, you know, if the train was running late or whatever, he'd send a message down up to Stratford and say, "Can Elliott warm up? Do the warm up?" And so I sort of started to learn about music directing from him, and also from Tim. I played piano in a couple of our shows. Tim gave me some arrangements for stuff, and then our final show was up at the Edinburgh Fringe. We did this big sort of public. We did a big public show for a week at Edinburgh, which was a shortened version of Shakespeare. And we had generally the rehearsal process at Year Out were really short. Everything was really, really intense. But we had this big sort of 4-week rehearsal process, and Joe came in with like 5 songs for this show at the very beginning of the rehearsal process, and then said, "Oh, by the way, I'm only here for like 3 days, and then you're not going to see me till Edinburgh. Take the music. You keep it in check." So he taught us everything, and then I had to kind of keep it at a standard, if you like, for Joe for 4 weeks until we got to Edinburgh. And I remember sort of all of us meeting up with Joe up in Edinburgh and going, "Oh my God, have I like ruined all the music?" But he trusted me with it, and you know, I took that responsibility very seriously, and it was kind of, maybe it was that point that I went, "Oh, actually, maybe I can music direct. Maybe that's a thing I could do." Because it was during that year that I started to sort of, not learn. I kind of always was aware of the other roles in theatre. Certainly, you know, a few years before that, I was aware of what else went on. but it was in that year that I started to really learn what they did and what they actually were. And I realized I was enjoying all the self-directing projects and the devising projects. I was enjoying those a lot. And we were given opportunities every now and again to sort of help with lighting and stuff. And out of the 27 of us, I was the only person who took up the opportunity to go and do a day of lighting. And so I was taking, I was like realizing all these other things and really enjoying them and finding that I was actually enjoying them more than performing.
It's strange that no one else wanted to, I mean, especially lighting, because it's you see the performers, but not without the light. It's the second most important thing on the stage. In some respects, and no one else was interested in taking that up.
No, it was at a time. I remember the company was split into two groups, and one was doing a big show while the other group sort of did a smaller project, and then we swapped over. And I was helping with lighting, I think, on our big show, but then I also went and helped with like some of the tech stuff on the other group's big show while we were doing a little project. And I don't know if you remember, because obviously you were at Stratford College. I don't know if you remember the GV, the Gordon Valens studio.
Yes, yeah.
The big studio. So I remember, because the floor had so many layers of paint on it. This like concrete floor had so many layers of paint on it that it was really, really uneven. And the director that the other group had, a wonderful chap called Bennett Cassie, who's no longer in the industry, but he like wanted the floor to be as smooth as possible. So for the other group's show, not even my own show, I was on my hands and knees, like scraping paint off the floor.
Oh, wow. That is dedication.
But I was like, I want to do something. I want to be, I don't want to sit in my flat. I want to go and, make stuff. I want to.
No, it's actually refreshing that someone like yourself is out there. You've got your finger in all the pies, trying out everything, trying to keep the wheels turning. Whereas you've got some people who get involved in theatre, they're interested, it's them, they're in the spotlight, they want the eyes on them.
Certainly for me now as a director, I'm really pleased that I've done all that stuff and that I still do some of that stuff, because I think the best directors know something about every single department of of a show. Or at least have some understanding of what the other people do, because, and it's, they say it about actors, a lot of the best directors are former actors, because the director is aware of what they're asking an actor to do. And I think that applies to every other department of theatre, because, if you have some idea of lighting, you're not going to be, you're not going to ask a lighting designer to do something that is quite, that is impossible. Or you have some idea of what it takes to do to make things happen. And I think that's really, really important, and it helps the sort of collaborativeness of making theatre.
Yeah, it also gives them a chance to sort of empathise with the workload that they're putting on the people involved. So what were the steps after this? So
yeah, I'd finished the course and realised that I wasn't a great actor. I probably could have got by, but you know what this industry's like, it's really hard. And if you're not exceptional, actually, finding a lot of work is probably not going to be very easy. But I also realized that I enjoyed the directing more, and I enjoyed the music directing. And I observed our directors, the visiting directors that we had, and I really enjoyed learning from them. So I there was like a second, an optional second year, but it was part-time. It was like 2 evenings a week. So I stayed in Stratford and got a job. I ended up working 2 jobs while doing this sort of second year, while I kind of worked out what I wanted to do. And I sort of did that for a year. And then got a job as an assistant director in Stratford for Tread the Board's theatre company at the Attic, because they had a visiting director coming in who just happened to be my boss in the day job that I was in.
Right, okay.
And she needed an assistant, and I was like, oh, I can do a little bit of that, and I'm willing to work. So I went in and assistant directed that. And again, learn so much, from her and from these actors that came from London. And
what show was this?
It was Macca's, the Scottish play. So and so I learned a lot on that. But there was this sort of 1920s production where the witches were sort of showgirls, and the director wanted the witches to sing. And because I had a bit of music experience, I was like, yeah, sure, I can do a bit of that. And so I put them in 3-part harmony, in really close 3-part harmony, actually. I don't envy those girls, actually. It was quite hard. And so we did the show, and then JP, as he's known, who's the artistic director of Tread the Boards, then approached me and said, look, we do panto every year, and we don't have a music director, and you can do a little bit of music. Do you fancy sort of giving it a try? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come along and do it. So I went in and music directed the show, and then they never got rid of me. So I just sort of stayed.
To be fair, why would they? I mean, I've seen you work for them, and it's I think that's something I wanted to get onto. Was while you were with Tread the Boards, they took a show of Christmas Carol to the Albany. So they took that to the Albany, and you were the musical director for that. And I don't know, it's the music you came up with, that it was almost like there was a mini orchestra in there, and there was you in this pit. You were sort of like a cross between Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins. And I think it might be The Little Mermaid, where you see an octopus playing the drums or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
That's what it was like watching you. It was amazing.
Thank you. It was, I mean, bearing in mind, I had just sort of started working sort of semi-professionally, and I'd done a couple of shows at the Attic, which is, for people who don't know, it's this kind of small 90-seat, lovely theatre. And suddenly they were like, oh, so we're doing this show in Coventry in a 600-seat theatre. Would you be the music director? Sure, why not? I can do that.
It's I know they do shows here and there. You get some of the stately homes, don't you, where they put on. What show was it? Was it Pride and Prejudice they put on?
Yeah, we've done Pride and Prejudice, and some of the Halloween shows go out to sort of Stoneleigh Abbey, and
that's right. Yeah, so the places that really suit these, but they're still small settings. Basically, it's basically a stately front room, but then the Albany is quite another level.
It is, and I think it was a big thing for Tread the Boards at the time as well, and because they've been at the Attic now. We must be about 11 years, and this was 2016. So this is 4 years ago. And so it was quite I think it was a big thing for them at the time, and it was amazing that they were like, having done 2 shows for them, come and do this big show for us, and it was a huge privilege and a huge honor. I felt very lucky to be there, and I spent all year on the show, because it wasn't full time. I was still working in a tea room at the same time, so I had to kind of do it in my spare time almost until we got to the show, and we ran for about 3.5 weeks, I think. And actually I was really lucky, because where I was working, my boss in the tea room was a stage manager. She used to be a stage manager. She is now back in the industry as a stage manager. And so I said to her, I was like, can I have 2 months off to go and do a show? And she was like, yeah, sure, off you go. It was great.
That is definitely 1 in a million.
Absolutely. I landed in a really, really good spot. And so I wrote some music for the show, and we did lots of carols in proper 4-part harmony and everything. There was a big kids chorus as well, I remember. And
yes, there was.
And we went into a recording studio as well, because, as you say, it was just me in the pit on my own. But we recorded, I think, a trumpet, a flute, and maybe a clarinet. I can't quite remember. There were three musicians, fantastic musicians, who came into a studio and recorded some stuff so that I could play live with the recordings. But yeah, I had a piano and like a big drum and some cymbals, and I said to Tread the Boards, I was like, I need a tubular bell. And they were like, I'm sorry, what? I was like, I need a tubular bell. So they got me a tubular bell.
Now, before you go on, can I just guess for my own satisfaction, wasn't it in E?
I'm going to say yes, probably.
I'd seem to remember I was really proud of myself for knowing what it was, But yeah, sorry, that was just for my own personal satisfaction.
But you're right. We had to get the right tubular bell, because tubular bells are pitched percussion. They're not just sort of they're not unpitched percussion. And it was I think I used it right at the beginning of the show as like the ensemble sort of came down the aisles singing Christmas carols, and it was sort of 3 different Christmas carols on top of each other, which was a nightmare. Which was a nightmare to arrange. And I should never have started it, and it took me ages to get right. I think I finally cracked it on a plane. I think I spent like 2 or 3 months trying to get these 3 carols to work at the same time as each other. And then I'd been away with my parents and was on the plane back from Crete or somewhere. I was like, I've got it, and I sat on the plane arranging Christmas carols in like July or something. I don't know. But yeah, so the tubular bell had to be pitched to the right note, but they got one, and it's still in the attic somewhere. Hasn't been used since.
It was absolutely fantastic because I was part of the ensemble in that show, so I was part of that 3-part harmony with the carols.
Yeah.
In terms of coming up with your orchestrations, your original compositions, with that one in particular, you obviously would have had a lot of inspiration because it was a Christmas one. And where is there not a choice of Christmas music to choose from? You've got all these carols. So did you find that easier, or was it, like you say, more difficult to make it your own? Because it was really atmospheric, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, I mean, I do remember rightly. I remember it was around Christmas time, and I was thinking, this is like Christmas incarnate, being a part of this show, and especially the music. So did it take much to make it your own thing, because you didn't just want to copy what people sing at people's front doors?
No, you're right. I didn't want to do that. I was quite lucky. During Year Out, we had done Christmas caroling, and proper traditional Christmas caroling. 27 of us singing in full 4-part harmony in Stratford, just out in town. And it was really, really traditional stuff that you don't always hear. And so I still had like the memory of all of these carols, and went and found all the arrangements and things. So a lot of it came from that, actually, because obviously, it's Victorian Christmas, because it's Christmas Carol.
Yeah, you can't go out and select a bit of Cliff Richard for it, can you?
No, not quite. It might have jarred a little bit. But so that in a sense, I suppose, made it easier. But also, I didn't have a lot of experience in doing that. Like, I'd scored Panto the year before, and that was about it, professionally. So I was sort of learning and experimenting as I went. And I think if I did it now, 4 years later, it would be very, very, very different. Because I've learned so much in the last 4 years, and I've done much more of that kind of thing. But it was, I mean, at the age I was, I think must have been 21. So I was very proud of what I did. And a lot of it was very, very simple stuff. Like, even like Marley coming on was just using a couple of cymbals and just kind of using them in a very subtle way, I suppose. And using the percussion in that kind of subtle way. And also using the things in the music, using the things that we associate with a traditional Christmas, like the sound of a brass band playing a Christmas carol. And there are things that we associate with Christmas that make it a lot easier to kind of create that atmosphere. And sort of certainly once you shove a lot of traditional carols in the original 4-part harmony, we did the original version of In the Bleak Midwinter, which is my favorite Christmas carol.
Oh yes, that sounded beautiful.
I love it, and the original sort of arrangement of that is just absolutely beautiful, and so it kind of does it itself, really.
I don't know how it could have been improved, to be honest, because I think that was one of the few shows I've actually been a part of where I was dying to be in the audience. I didn't want to be on the stage. I thought it was just so Christmassy, and I think one of the biggest parts of that was the music, and I will always take my hat off to you for that show because it was incredible. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Although I have to say, I was very lucky because I had the best seat in the house because I was in the pit.
looking up at the stage and watching you all. And so that was lovely for me because I got to watch it. I think we did like 43 shows in the end, which like to a lot of people, like, oh, that's 43 shows. I do 8 shows a week for 2 years or whatever, But for me, at 21, first big job in a 600-seat theatre, 43 shows was a lot.
Yeah. And normally twice a day as well. You must have been knackered.
Yeah. I mean, not as much as you guys must have been on stage, but I got to sit down.
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true.
For the entire show.
How different is an experience like that to scoring something from scratch? So I assume you've done shows since. Obviously, you've done shows since then, but I assume you've had to score them and come up with what is going to be the theme. And
yeah, I mean, certainly where it comes to the attic, we don't do a lot of original. I don't do a lot of original scoring. I use a lot of pre-existing music because a lot of the time there isn't the time. Certainly, last year and the year before, I was involved in 80% of the shows at the attic. And we have quite a quick turnaround. We do a show, it's sort of almost a show per month almost. And I mean, sometimes we rehearse stuff in 2 weeks and everything is sort of, we don't necessarily plan that far in advance, because if you did that, you would be working on your July show while doing your March show, but still have a show in June to do as well. Everything moves quite quickly. So there's not often a lot of time to write stuff for shows. That being said, I have done it, but mainly where I've not been doing a lot of other stuff. We did The Wizard of Oz in 2018, which had 4 brand new songs in it. And so that I spent 3 months like just on The Wizard of Oz.
So when you say you did The Wizard of Oz, was this the sort of famous version that everyone knows?
No. So we did. So JP, who runs the attic, said, "Could we do a kids show every year, a sort of summer kids show?" And he was like, "We're going to do The Wizard of Oz." I was like, "Great, okay." He said, "We're not doing like the MGM version with all the songs in it. It's a new adaptation from the original book, and it's going to be a play. There's going to be no music in it. It's just going to be a play." I was like, "Okay, can we not do Somewhere Over the Rainbow? Because people associate Wizard of Oz with Somewhere Over you can't do the Wizard of Oz without Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, maybe." And so I kept pestering him. And then he was like, "Okay, fine. We'll put Somewhere Over the Rainbow in it." I was like, "Great, okay." And then that was it. And then I got a message from him in sort of like the April or something. Bear in mind, the show was in July. And he was like, "Could you write some original music? Just a little bit of, just a little bit of music, maybe a theme or something." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely." My brain went, songs, brand new song, brand new musical. And that's essentially what I did. So I started, I read the book, because I've never read the original book. And the film changed a lot. Like things like the famous ruby slippers in the book are silver. And it was done because, here's a little fact, was done because they just started doing Technicolor. Basically, they wanted to show it off with these amazing red shoes. The whole Kansas stuff that you see in the film is not in the book. It starts with Dorothy waking up in Oz. I mean, we did do the Kansas stuff at the attic. And then there's like, before they get to the wizard, there's all these like other adventures and all these other characters and stuff. So I looked at the book and I didn't watch the film. I know the film very, very well. But I didn't go and watch it. And what I essentially ended up doing was writing a new song for the 3 friends that she meets, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion. Because in the film, they all have a variation on the same song, just with different lyrics. So I wrote 3 brand new songs for them.
How difficult is that when you've got such a well-known, iconic source material? How difficult was it to say, no, I'm not going that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time, Somewhere Over the Rainbow was the thing I didn't touch. I was like, that's iconic. Nobody touches that. but this is where my slightly controversial opinions may come in. But the song that the Scarecrow, the Lion, and the Tin Man sing, I don't necessarily think is the greatest piece of music or the greatest lyrics.
Ooh, you're stabbing a lot of people's childhoods there.
I love The Wizard of Oz. It's a classic. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But in terms of a composition, from a compositional point of view, from a lyric point of view, it's not the greatest thing in the world. So I didn't feel too bad about replacing it. I'm not saying what I wrote is any better. I'm not saying what I wrote is any good at all, but I didn't feel so bad about attempting to rewrite it. But the great thing is the thing that makes it a bit easier, I suppose. Those three characters are so specific. They're almost caricature-like because of the way what the Wizard of Oz is. So you have a lot of material just in the character to go on and to write from. And so the Scarecrow, his song automatically became like this sort of country song, with a banjo and a fiddle, and then the Tin Man became this sort of big love ballad, sort of jazzy love ballad, if you like. And then the Lion song is the one that I was really, really disappointed with, and I've since scrapped because I tried to mimic the Lion King, and it just kind of didn't quite work. I mean, I did the whole thing from starting to write, through orchestrating, and through rehearsing in 3 months. And there was a fourth song as well. I wrote a song for the Wizard because the Wizard never got a song, and I thought that was really sad. And I almost wrote a song for the Witch. I was told not to, and then me and Alex Whitworth, who played the Witch, decided that the Witch should have a rap, and then it never happened. Maybe I'll write a witch's rap in a la Sondheim in Into the Woods.
Whose decision was it to not give the Witch song? Was that JP?
I think so. Yeah, I think he decided I was writing too much.
Right. Okay.
He has since said that he was really happy with the show, and I was really happy with the show. It was an amazing experience writing essentially a very small musical. And I look back on it's only two and a half years ago, but I've gone back to some of the material that I wrote, and I've cut quite a bit of it, but I've also started writing more stuff. I've written a new song for Dorothy that actually sits in place of Somewhere of the Rainbow. That was tough. And then, I've started writing an opening number and some other stuff as well, so that I can hopefully in a couple of years maybe have a new musical based on the Wizard of Oz. But
yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. I think I'd actually want to watch that because I'm not a fan of the original film. So there's something controversial for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
I just think it's so cheesy. I don't do cheesy. I like dark and gritty.
It's also I always find it a bit odd because it's a musical. It's a big, Dorothy has that lovely Somewhere of the Rainbow at the beginning, and then all the Munchkins come out and sing, and then she goes on a trip and they all have a song, and then it stops being a musical. There's no more you get sort of Ding Dong the Witch is Dead a bit later on, but there's a whole section where there's no songs, and it's is this still a musical? What's going on? Which is one of the reasons I wrote a song for the Wizard, because I was the Wizard needs a song.
But yeah, it's funny how that comes about, because I've had similar opinions about other films recently. I'm quite a fan of the Aladdin remake. I really enjoyed that.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought
I hated it.
You hurt me. I absolutely fell in love with it. But the thing is, I'm a real saddo. I bought the soundtrack last week and I was listening to it at work, and it sort of goes from halfway through the film to the end. There's the first act. There's probably about 5 songs. The second act, sod all. So when you had that opinion of Wizard of Oz, when you realised it became a film instead of a musical, some weird way, do you feel like if you're going for a genre, you stick to it? So when you're writing things, if you're writing a musical, is it a musical?
Yeah, and I suppose it depends on what the phrase "a musical" is quite broad, particularly now. 50 years ago and more, a musical was Rodgers and Hammerstein. That was a musical, and it was that kind of style. But when when you got a bit later on and you started to get composers, like Sondheim and Lloyd Webber, and then a bit later composers like Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked and Pippin and stuff, like they started to change what musical theatre was. And now you come a bit even further forward and you get composers like Jason Robert Brown and Lin-Manuel Miranda, and they've changed what a musical is, because a musical is not all what it was in like the 40s, with jazz hands and tap dancing, or what it was when Rodgers and Hammerstein were writing. A musical can be serious. A musical can be more like a play with songs. A musical doesn't have to be all jazz hands and smiley faces anymore. And I think that's awesome. I love that, because it's such a wide genre now. But the thing about musicals is it's storytelling through song. That for me is the point you start at. It is storytelling through song. And if you stop storytelling through song, then it is not a musical. If there is a song for no reason, not a musical. Like a song should move the story along. It shouldn't just sort of stop the action so that a character can stop and sing for 3 minutes. Like you should get something out of every song. And likewise, like you say, if there is no singing for a while, if there is no music for a while, then it is not a musical. And if you can't find a reason to put a song in where there should be, then maybe it shouldn't be a musical, if that makes sense.
Definitely, you are making sense. That is perfect. And I think it's interesting you say that it's fantastic now that musicals are so diverse. I personally agree. There was famously, I think it was Les Mis on its opening night, was absolutely slammed by critics.
Absolutely, it was. People hated it.
Yeah, because they was like, how can you make a musical out of such grim material?
Yeah.
But that is, if you're going to see a musical in the West End, that's one you go and see, because it's epic.
35 years old. It's lasted for 35 years for a reason. It's amazing.
Yeah. So it's... And then, of course, you got things like Sweeney Todd, for example, which is... Sweeney
Todd is one of my all-time favourite musicals. If somebody said, here's an orchestra and a cast, do whatever musical you want, that's immediately what I jump to.
Let's see if I can draw out another controversial opinion from you. Sweeney Todd, stage or film?
Stage.
Stage. Why stage? Why does stage win?
It's a theatrical piece. It's not a cinematic piece. The whole nature of the entire show is incredibly theatrical. The opening is an ensemble of people. It's the only Sondheim show with an ensemble. Every other Sondheim show has... Every person in it has a character, whereas Sweeney's the only one with an ensemble. And he did that for a reason. They're like his Greek chorus. And they come on and they literally sing to the audience. They sing Attend to the Tale of Sweeney Todd. Yes, you can do that in a film, but they didn't do it in the film.
No, they had the music, didn't they, at the start? The overture.
They have the melody, and I don't dislike the film. Actually, yeah. I think it's a good film. Sorry, when you get Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp and Alan Rickman and Timothy Spall and Sacha, when you get all those amazing people in a film and Tim Burton directing it with Sondheim material, it's gonna be a great film. And he did do a very, very, very good job. But yeah, show. Absolutely. I was lucky. I've seen it a couple of times. I saw the Michael Ball, Imelda Staunton. It was set in the 50s. It was a Chichester production that they transferred to London. So I got to see that. And I also saw it in Manchester at the Royal Exchange. And that was set in the 70s.
So we've come quite a long way from Shy Lad up north. What's next in the chapters of Elliott Wallis?
Well, I mean, as we're recording this, hopefully Panto. At the moment of recording, I'm supposed to be going to Warwickshire for Tread the Boards to do an outdoor touring Panto. There's still a bit of a question mark over whether that's going to happen because of COVID and lockdown and everything. So hopefully that. I will eventually, probably next year, be going back to London to resume the job that I just started. Yeah, and I mean, I've the thing we haven't touched on is SE Theatre Company, which is the company I run with Simao Vaz, and we've got plans. It's very briefly, it's a theatre company that focuses on reimagining classics for a contemporary audience, but also exploring new writing and And yeah, we've done a few things. We've done some Greek tragedy, some Shakespeare, a little bit of contemporary stuff as well. And we've got sort of some plans for the next few years. And hopefully at some point that will include a musical, because although I'm a director and a music director, I've never directed a musical. So eventually, hopefully in the next few years, hopefully sooner than the next years, I'll be directing a musical. I am actually have been in contact with some composers in America who have a show that's been done over there but not been done over here, and sort of very, very early talks have been happening about us hopefully doing a version of it over here, potentially with some actor musicians, because I love doing actor musician stuff. So
could you give us any teasers as to?
No.
Oh,
because it's really, really early days, and I'm currently trying to find producers and or a theatre that will work with us if anybody's listening. I'm looking for people to help, but yeah, but they seem quite keen on adapting it into an actor musician production, and hopefully we can get that going in London in the next year, or maybe 2 years. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, so that this dream that very young 18-year-old you had of getting into this industry isn't being crushed by these lockdowns, by this COVID.
Absolutely not. I mean, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I found the first lockdown at times quite tough. I came home to my childhood home for the first time, sort of for a long period of time, for the first time in 7 years, and learned to live with my parents again. And certainly, I mean, I came home in March, sort of April, May, sort of May, June, July, May, June time. I did find, quite tough. I've been quite lucky over the last few years where I've been working on something constantly, and quite often would have the next 2 or 3 things ahead of me, sort of thinking about them already, because it's just the way I've been working, particularly at the attic. So I've been constant working on stuff, and the lockdown made me realize that I'm not very good at just, say, sitting at the piano and writing for the sake of writing. I need an end goal. I need a project. So it kind of made me realize I'm not very good at that. And I think that was quite hard. It's been a bit better this second lockdown. I've been back to London since, and come back and soaked up some culture and some live theatre. And obviously I'm working on Panto, and I have an end goal. It's been a little bit easier. But yeah, as soon as I can get back in the theatre, I'll be back, running at full speed again.
Back with a vengeance.
Absolutely. I think that's the case for the most of the theatre industry. A lot of us are finding it hard, but you look at some of the work that people are doing online, and some of the amazing creativity that's come out of the industry just from their homes is amazing. And the thing I was in, as I say, I was in London for a month, and I got to go and see lots of theatre. I was at Southwark Playhouse, and I went to the Palladium, and I saw some outdoor theatre as well. And people were there. People were desperate to be in the theatre, and people were making really, really good work as well. And if anything, that just says that the industry is ready. We will be back, and I think the industry will come back stronger and more determined, I think. And I know there's a lot of people who have, are now not working in the industry, but might come back. And I've got some friends who've decided, that they're not going to come back to the industry, which is, heartbreaking, but there's a lot of us still here. And this is what I have always wanted to do. And a year off, I mean, I haven't really had a year off. I've been lucky, I've done a couple of bits here and there, but a year off is not going to stop me. I'm going to keep going.
I'm glad to hear it. That's promising. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
I think for a lot of us, it's not just a job. It's not just what we do. It's our life. It is a way of life in a sense, because quite often it consumes you in a wonderful way. Like it sometimes can take over your life, and it is not just a job. It is a way of life.
You've been listening to #Performing Arts, a Dumber Archangel Sounds production. Produced and edited by John Ellis Benton. Music by Aaron Crowder. Next time.
I sat and watched this show where this woman, I don't know what planet she was on, but she was doing all sorts. And then, apparently, and I hadn't realised, she'd put a bowl under the chair next to me. So she was doing a dance piece, came up to me, grabbed the bowl underneath the chair next to me, sat down and started shaving her legs.
Oh.
And I was horrified. I was thinking, where am I? And I remember going home and telling my parents, and they were like, were you in the right place? And I'm like, you know what? I really don't know.
Dumber Archangel.